Hey there, compliance officers and administrators. I'm here at our office tool chest to recommend the most useful tool for improving your organization. It is the suggestion box. One of the first jobs I got out of university was at a tax software company. I like to think of myself as a QA tester, but nearly everyone had to man the phones for a couple of months during tax season. But 1995 was a tax season like no other tax season. We were launching the first Windows version of our software, and right before the boxes were shipped to the stores, one of the developers made a last-minute tweak to the code, changing the way it called up the Windows printer dialog. The bug was fatal. The tax returns would not print. Every user needed to print because electronic filing wasn't a thing back in
1995.
Apart from a little bit of mail order, most software was loaded on 3.5-inch floppy disks and sold in stores in small cardboard boxes. And nobody filled in the registration cards. And even if they did, they'd take weeks to come back to us by mail. Only when it was too late would users discover that printing wasn't possible. The internet existed in
1995,
but not like today. We could offer file transfers on CompuServe or AOL, but nobody knew how to go there. So that meant that everyone was going to call us. And phone they did. We would arrive at 7 a.m. and the phone lines would already be jammed. The second you hung up the phone with one customer, it'd ring with the next one. And we didn't have a 1-800 number, and so everyone was calling long distance, and rates were crazy high back in the day. To make matters worse, the company had a cutting-edge phone system with dozens of lines and elevator music that was occasionally interrupted by a recording which told them how much we appreciated their business and that we would be with them shortly. Except it wasn't shortly. Every customer lucky enough to have gotten through on one of those lines would spend at least an hour on hold. So as you can imagine, every customer would want to yell at us for 15 minutes before we could even help them. Taking calls from irate customers for 8 or 10 hours a day is not good for your mental health. I remember one day we left all the calls on hold and met in the conference room. The company was going to solve the problem by getting more incoming phone lines. Now, I was all of 23 years old, the youngest member of the team. I looked around the room and I couldn't believe that it was me that was going to crack. I figured I'd lose my job, but I finally blurted out, why not just shut down all the extra lines? I remember getting yelled at in front of the entire team for not understanding the severity of the situation and that going to fewer lines would make things worse. I made a mental note to myself, never again would I point out someone else's ignorance to their face. It took them a few days to figure out that my suggestion actually made sense, and that they did eventually disable the extra lines. And so instead of sitting on hold for an hour, the customer that dialed at exactly the moment a support line opened up would immediately get through to a person. Instead of dealing with anger and exasperation, we were dealing with surprise and relief. The number of calls we could handle doubled, and the customer satisfaction level improved drastically from the 0% we'd been getting. Ultimately, my suggestion did not save the company. They sold out to Intuit later that summer, but they did survive through that tax season, and the owners still got some value out of their company. Why did I tell you that story? I wanted to point out that good ideas don't always come from the top, and making suggestions is not as easy as you think. Encouraging suggestions from your workers can increase sales, reduce costs, eliminate waste, improve productivity, boost morale, or even save lives. Forget the box, though. It's easier to set up suggestions in Workhub. It's as simple as toggling the feature to enabled. There are other optional settings like choosing whether suggestions and comments need to be approved before being shared with other workers. Then just sit back and wait for great ideas, and admittedly some not so great ideas, to be submitted by your personnel on the front lines. They do this by clicking Post Suggestion, providing the background of the situation at hand, and proposing a solution. If the setting allows, they can post the suggestion anonymously or as themselves. They can select from a list of potential benefits and even calculate the expected return on investment by estimating the benefits and costs. Once the suggestion is approved for sharing, other workers can rate the suggestion from 1 to 5 stars and add comments. They can even give thumbs up or thumbs down to other people's comments. New suggestions show up in the administrator portal as pending approval. The administrator can make them public, they can approve them, or even mark them as implemented. Or conversely, they can decline them, in which case it's a good idea to leave a comment explaining that decision. The key outcome of encouraging suggestions at your workplace is engaging your workers. Embrace their input into your workplace culture and decisions. As Amit Kalantri once said, the best way to flatter people is to ask them for their advice. Let's see what Google suggests we should do. It is, I suggest we form a calming circle. I suggest we learn to love ourselves. Amen, Whitney. The suggestion box. Okay, I gotta figure out why that didn't work.